So my name's Maddie, I'm 25 and I live in Wyong. I didn't grow up with God, a little bit anti it in a way, and it was very hard to grow up like that. I also grew up pretty sick. All my growing up, I just remember not being well, and that transferred to mentally as well as physically. By the time I was a teenager, that's when everything kind of came to a head. It started when I was 16, started getting really unwell and nobody really knew why. And I went to so many doctors and just kind of gave up because no one could understand what was wrong with me. I got put on so many medications that just completely numbed me out and really made me stop living. By the time I was 18, I was bedridden. I wouldn't go outside, didn't see the sun. I would only see my parents and doctors and my nan. And it was just desolate. There was nothing there. There was no hope, no peace. It was just like that until I was about 20. So for about 3 years, I just did nothing, had no one, and it was a very, very hard time. I was pretty much done. I verbally said out loud to myself, which I've never been one to talk out loud or talk to myself, like if I'm not better in 6 months, this is it. That's the end. Peacing out. I won't keep going because I just can't. I do not have the strength to keep going. When you've fought for so many years, and even it felt like I've been fighting my whole life against something. So I verbally said that out loud, and I really meant it. Like I've struggled with suicidal ideation for my whole life, but it never felt the same as it did in that moment. I was watching videos about God, and I started coming around to the idea about God, and then I started watching videos on people who started believing in God and started having pretty miraculous healing. And it was like, wow, it's like, okay, this is the one thing that I haven't tried. I've tried everything. I've tried everything the world has to offer. Nothing has given me actual peace and actual healing. It's like, okay, I'm gonna try this. And I don't even really think I believed that anything would happen, but it was like, well, at least in this 6 months, it would be nice to believe in something that I now see as truth instead of just the lies of the world and New Age and everything like that. So I was like, okay, well, even if nothing happens, it would be nice to have faith and nice to have this 6 months until it's over. So I was like, okay, like I believe in this faith and I believe in God now. I started to feel it. I started to sit in it. Probably for about an hour a day, I would sit in it, sit in that feeling, meditate. I never prayed. I didn't verbally talk to God, but I just tried to feel it. And I think God really knew that in these 6 months was that time, and he did intervene. Because after that 6 months, I was well enough to live a life. I was well enough to go outside. I was well enough to take care of myself, and I was well enough to even like read. I couldn't even, everything was so, I couldn't even read a book. And everything changed. It felt like all the chains that was like on my mind and my thinking like broke away. I stopped fearing the world. I stopped fearing my own body, and I just felt peace for the first time in my life. I started more exploring about the biblical stories, and it was great. Everything was so great. Even though there was still things that were going on that was very difficult, but even when I think back on that time, all I can feel is like a peace that was there that had never been there. And then about a year and a half later, it was like, okay, it's time to get back into the world and, you know, reacquaint myself with everything, because I'd been so separate for so long. And I did fall away from that faith that I had started and that relationship that I had started. And after falling away from that and moving into the world again without that, everything started going wrong again. The things that I was doing that were hard, I was getting off all the medication that I was put on since I had that healing. That started becoming extremely difficult. Family stuff started becoming extremely difficult, even though I was always dealing with it, but it just hit, everything just hit me. Like I didn't have that protection anymore. I was back in the world and I didn't take God with me. Having those hard times and feeling the things of the world without God has been more solidifying in my faith, because then when I come back to my faith, I see the change again. Because I only had my own understanding of God. I didn't have the word of God, so I didn't know. I was just leaning on my own understanding. And everything kept going so wrong. I felt like I'd gone back to square one when I was sick. I had inquired about 12 rehab programs to try and help me get off the medication and other things, and could find no help there. And then it was like, okay, yeah, the world can't help me. It's like, come back to God. Put your eyes back on God. I have no one in my life that believes in God and has faith and can guide me in that direction. And that was really hard. I need to find people that feel the same way, people that have walked through these things but with God and can help me in my relationship with God. And then I looked up churches in the area. This one was the closest one, and it was like, okay, this is what I need. I need to come to a place where I can feel God and feel God in its people. And I came. And when I walked through the doors, I felt that same feeling that I had after I was healed and the times where I'd looked to God. And it was so solidifying that it was like, yeah, this is it. This has been God all this time and I'm in the right place. And I'd read online, it's like, find a church where the people feel like the church. And I'd never set foot in a church in my life. And when I came in here, I was like, oh wow, like this is it. Even when I first came here for my first service, I got introduced to the women around my age, and Abby asked me, she's like, oh, so how long have you been a Christian? And it was instinctively, I was like, oh no, I'm not a Christian, because I'm not doing the things, and I've never been to a church. And the first sermon that I heard from Pastor Phil, it was about rejecting the religiousness spirit and the righteous religiousness and just having a relationship with Jesus and God. And it was exactly what I needed to hear, because I'd been so insecure in my standing in faith that it wasn't good enough and that I wasn't good enough, and the things that I'd done would exclude me from being around people that were also of the faith. And that was really powerful. And I didn't know what an altar call was. I didn't know, I've asked so many questions and fumbled myself through the services, but I've just had these people with these hands on me that have just been so beautiful and have never made me feel silly for asking extremely basic questions. so I didn't know that that would be like that. I was hoping, but that's how it's been for me. And even since coming here, I've experienced more healing on like the remnants of my pain and my body. And I didn't even know I wanted that, because I'd felt like, oh, God's already done this much for me. That's enough. But coming here, I've had more than I've ever could have wanted. And I also know that if I fall off my faith again, that now I've got people around me that will pick me back up and steer me in the right direction, which I never had before. And that's been the biggest blessing, because I'm not alone anymore and I have everyone around me.